Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers. I declare this meeting open, and in so doing, I acknowledge that Goomburup is Wadani Noongar Budja, and I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Councillor Plum is an apology for tonight. Declarations of interest, councillors, members of the public. You're right, Liam? They only want to hear my voice once. Councillor Kozisek has submitted a impartiality declaration tonight for item 10.4.1, as she is the President of Retail Co. Are there any further declarations of interest, councillors? Thank you. Can I also move confirmation of the previous minutes of the OCM held on the 10th of November? Councillor Giles, Councillor Kozisek, all in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you. Any petitions tonight, councillors? Thank you. I'm just going to deal with, there's only two items, one needs an absolute majority, so I'll just deal with them individually anyway tonight. So item 10.2.1, can I have someone move the executive recommendation, please? Councillor, yep, seconder, Councillor Smith. Is it likely to... You can ask a question.
Is there any cost to council?
Yeah, the report says it's $7,500.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Any debate? I'll put it all in favour. That's carried unanimously, thank you. 10.4.1. Can I have someone move the executive recommendation? Councillor Smith?
No, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move an alternate motion, please.
Yeah, once we get this one dealt with...
Can I not speak to it, what the motion's going to be before that?
No.
Happens? I understood it was in standing orders. I was able to read what my alternate motion would be.
I'll invite you to do that in a second, Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
Is someone prepared to move this executive recommendation? Really? Sorry. Councillor Miguel, is there a seconder? Councillor Brown. Councillor Smith, you give notice of an amendment. Go ahead.
It's not great change, Mr Mayor. My alternate motion is, according to the executive recommendation, except I change application fee for new outdoor eating areas $50, annual licence fee renewal for 10 or less chairs $100, annual licence fee renewal for 11 to 20 chairs $120, annual licence fee renewal for 21 to 30 chairs $220, annual licence fee renewal for 31 or over chairs $320, and the number 2 invoice, etc., as listed on the agenda.
Thank you. Councillor Miguel, do you wish to speak?
I'll reserve that right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Councillor Brown. Reserve. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if it was possible, I'd like to make an amendment that we have a waiver until the of all fees. I'm happy with what the fee structure is, and we have a waiver until the August 31st, 2021. I'd just like to add that to number 3. So I'm happy for that to pass, but just waivering the fees from January to August.
So you're looking at until August, so starting in August. Right, just hold that thought. Someone speak against the executive recommendation.
I've just got a quick question, if I may.
Another question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there was some consideration at all by the officers to, given it has been COVID, whether there was some consideration as whether either waiving it or doing something a little bit more generous. Mind you, I have read the document, and I do understand that it is an improvement on the previous position potentially. Yeah, I just wondered, given the circumstance, it's not a lot of money. $15,000, I think, all up, was the fee that were due to be collected previously. So I just wondered whether that's been considered.
CEO.
Through Mr Mayor, There's been a fair bit of consideration about what a new schedule of fees and charges might look like. This was instigated by officers based on some feedback from food premises. Given that our range of other concessions that were made during COVID have now been wound back, and that essentially has been business as usual, has been sort of reapplied to the hospitality sector, these reductions were considered to be quite significant and therefore quite manageable. So as an example, 10 or less chairs would have cost $438. Under this arrangement, it would be $150. So that's just as an example.
Thank you. I ask for a speaker against. Councillor Kozisek.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to speak against the executive recommendation simply because I think in this current period of time we are still suffering some of the ramifications of COVID. Some of the eating houses, well, most of them should be still having to do reduced seating inside and outside, so it's not easy. As you will recall, last week I asked if there had been any consultation with cafes, restaurants, etc., and the response was no. However, the officers had looked at several other cities and shires to give some idea of what fees they were charging. As you will also recall, I too looked into several other cities as a comparison. Albany charged $120 flat fee plus an environmental health officer fee of $65 a year. Rockingham, $120 flat fee. Mandurah, $100 flat fee. So that's, no matter how many chairs you have, that's just a flat fee. I felt these three were a valid comparison. They're all in the lower region of the southwest and they're all near the ocean. That sort of worked for me. The City of Bunbury offers a free trade area to all other retailers. I believe it is up to 1.5 metres, but I couldn't find it on the city's website, on the footpath. And must not obstruct any pedestrian traffic, etc. This basically means that any retailer may utilise this space with no licence or fee required to put out signage, good for sale, etc., no cost whatsoever. However, cafes and restaurants are not able to use this area. My question to you is, what is the intention of this fee for al fresco dining? Is it to ensure public safety? And if this is the case, then I understand a small fee is required for an environmental health officer to check on them, for sure. After that, I'm not really sure. Surely it seems more equitable if all traders were given the same fee. And I'm not suggesting that we start charging retailers for putting their sandwich board out on the street. Please don't think that. But I think we need to consider that all retailers and all businesses, cafes, restaurants, pay rates. The bigger the premises, the bigger the rates, and also the bigger that they pay in rental costs, etc. Not on top of that, food premises pay what they call a food licence fee. Now, I believe this is on average $300 a year, and this fee includes an inspection from an environmental health officer. Some may argue that we have a range of sizes of al fresco dining offered through the city, and this is true, but the larger the premises, also the larger the rates they pay and the larger the rent, and I don't think that that's a good reason to make it too unfair. Operating cafes and restaurants is not a licence to print money, as many may think. You need to sell a lot of coffees and meals to cover all of the outgoing staff, rates, rent, electricity, water, phone, stock, workers' comp, insurance, you name it. I've been there. As an owner, you may, if you're lucky, draw a wage, but more often than not, your staff take home more than you do. I think we should be encouraging our cafes and restaurants to utilise and revitalise our streetscape in all of our streets as much as possible. And the trade-off, I think, probably has to be a more acceptable and equitable fee for outdoor eating areas. The start to 2020 was pretty ordinary, and then COVID hit and our food houses all had to close. As you know, some of them adapted extremely quickly, some of them had to shut and have not had a chance to reopen, so we've lost several, which is really, really sad. So this fee charge, as recommended by the Executive, it is an improvement definitely on our previous fee structure, but I believe it does not go far enough to support our small businesses. So I suggest that we support the alternative motion from Councillor Smith. Thank you very much.
Speaker 4, Councillor McGraw.
Councillors. Look, I hear what Councillor Kozisek is saying there and Councillor Smith prior to that with the changes, but think we just got to be a little bit careful about going and trying to change some figures on the run in a way. Obviously, our executive have come up with this figure. They've made things streamlined. The process is completely making it a lot cheaper, which is very important. And I think we got to go with our officers. They've looked into it. They've worked out potentially the costings, and we got to remember if we do, we're talking fairly minimum amount, $3,500, I believe it was across the board. So by going and changing those kind of things, if we're dropping stuff off there, then obviously we've got to make amends elsewhere through the budget. So look, for the figures we're talking, I think it's quite acceptable to leave this as it is with the officer's recommendation. I don't want to get caught in a situation where we're changing bits and pieces by amounts that we think at the time sounds good. Notwithstanding, I understand some of the things that have been said, but in this stage I'm happy to support the executive comments and the executive decision on this one. In terms of the waiving the next month's period, I won't support that. I'm quite happy to support this as it is. Things are in some way returning to normal, and of course we do have the contingencies there. If we do need to change things going forward, we obviously had that in plan previously. So council is very happy to support this as it is, and urge you to do the same.
Thank you. I'll put it all in favour, please indicate. Those against? That's lost. So 4 were Councillors McGuell, Councillor Brown, myself and Councillor McCleary. The rest were against. So we go back to Councillor Smith's amendment. So would you mind just repeating those numbers again, please, Councillor Smith?
Yes, Mr Mayor. You don't want me to go through the whole thing. So
just the numbers.
Number A, $50, B, $100, C, $120, D, $220, E, $320.
And 2 remains as is.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Yeah. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Steele. Question?
Could I have a background on those figures so I know where they're coming from and what the rationale is of that first, please?
Yeah, I'll invite Councillor Smith to speak to her motion. She might cover those questions. So, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason I came to those is that I looked at this and I've looked at the current situation in Bunbury and the rest of the country, and I just think we do have to support our small businesses. I didn't move an alternate motion to scrap them altogether. I didn't think that was right. I thought then there had to be some kind of charge for this, but we just never know what's in the future when COVID will strike again. We've just got South Australia as an example, and suddenly they're shut for a week. So I was just really thinking that I wouldn't expect this to be something that went on forever, but certainly just in the next year or so, that it just helps small businesses and our food outlets with just a little help. That was the reason I went for those figures without completely eliminating the whole lot. Thank you.
Councillor Steele, do you wish to speak? Is there a speaker against? I'll put it all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Yip, it's carried. Councillor Yip against, the rest were for. Thank you. I don't think there's any applications for leave closure. I declare this meeting closed at 5:43 p.m. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers and members of the public. Now we're going to immediately get